During this segment, we're going to talk about the differences between a dye and a pigmented toner. We'll apply it to the panel here. These have a clear coat in the formula, and in some cases you may not need the top coat depending on the durability of the particular application that you're using. Oftentimes molding and that type of thing doesn't have to be top coated, but if you were doing a work surface or a cabinet door that was going to get a lot of wear, you'd probably want to come back with a clear coat over the top of them. So we're going to show the differences between the dye and the pigmented and the effect it has on the panel. Now this is a dye that I'm going to apply first, and we're going to use light misting coats. You want to be careful not to puddle the material or put the material on too wet. Multiple light coats are much better than heavy wet coats. So that's going to be the dye side. I'm going to apply the pigmented side now. And again, light misting coats rather than a wet puddle is what you're looking for. The material will actually, the pigments will actually float if you get it too wet. Now we're going to slide in a timer here so that we can kind of see the dry times that we might have on this. Usually within just a few minutes they'll be dry enough to the touch. In about 10 minutes they should be dry. I'm going to go ahead and slide this over just a little bit so you can see the effect the dye has on the panel and the pigmented toner has on the panel. The dye again is more translucent. We can see the detail of the grain. Where the pigmented coat muddies it just a little bit, obscures a little bit of the background. We're going to pause the video, but we're going to let the timer to continue to run. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, we're coming up on about 2 minutes here, and we're going to check for dryness. Still just a touch tacky. Depending on how much material you put on will determine the dry time. But again, we're just 2 minutes into this. It's almost dry. What we might take a look at on our blending sheets, you can kind of see the difference between, I don't know if this would help putting it in behind, but the difference between the pigmented versus the dye. The dye again is more translucent. The pigmented, we're going to add another coat to the bottom now that that's flashed a little bit. And again, it's real important not to wet the surface too much so that the the pigments and the dyes tend to puddle or separate. Okay. While that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and slip this under a white sheet here. You see a little bit of a difference between the dye and the pigment. The dye side is dry. The pigment, again, probably need to wait just a few more minutes and it should be dry. But the dye is certainly dry.